Good morning. It's March 9th, and it's time for our daily dose of good news, which is from 2nd Chronicles chapter 9, verses 1 through 11 and 16 through 19. And today's going to be a little bit of a field trip in my house today to demonstrate some points visually, so I hope you hang in for that with some practical application for today that I think will both be interesting as well as freeing for you. So here we go. Hezekiah was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 29 years. His mother's name was Abijah, daughter of Zechariah. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father David had done. In the first month of the first year of his reign, he opened the doors of the temple of the Lord and repaired them. He brought in the priests and the Levites, assembled them in the square on the east side, and said, "Listen to me, Levites. Consecrate yourselves now, and consecrate the temple of the Lord, the God of your fathers. Remove all defilement from the sanctuary. Our fathers were unfaithful. They did evil in the eyes of the Lord, our God, and forsook him. They turned their faces away from the Lord's dwelling place and turned their backs on him. They also shut the doors of the portico and put out the lamps. They did not burn incense or present any burnt offerings at the sanctuary to the God of Israel. Therefore, the anger of the Lord has fallen on Judah and Jerusalem. He has made them an object of dread and horror and scorn, as you can see with your own eyes. This is why our fathers have fallen by the sword, and why our sons and daughters and our wives are in captivity. Now I intend to make a covenant with the Lord, the God of Israel, so that his fierce anger will turn away from us. My sons, do not be negligent now. For the Lord has chosen you to stand before him and serve him, to minister before him, and to burn incense." The priests went into the sanctuary of the Lord to purify it. They brought out to the courtyard of the Lord's temple everything unclean that they found in the temple of the Lord. The Levites took it and carried it out to the Kidron Valley. They began the consecration on the first day of the month, and by the 8th day of the month, they reached the portico of the Lord. For 8 more days, they consecrated the temple of the Lord itself, finishing on the 16th day of the first month. Here ends the reading. What I love about this text is that it's about not going through the motions. And so the king says, we have done wrong. And he confesses it and owns it and says, here's what we're going to do now. We're going to purge. We're going to spring clean. We are going to eliminate these things which are sinful, which have gone back from generation to generation, and we're going to throw it out like trash. And we're going to make God's house holy again. We're going to remove the things that defile. Okay? Now, I think there's a couple of ways to look at this. One is to think about this from immediately Lutheran point of view and to have almost an alarm go off. Works righteousness, works righteousness. Okay? And that's something we generally do want to avoid, right? The idea that we can earn our salvation. Now, this 2nd Chronicles text is from the Old Testament, right? So Jesus hasn't come and died on the cross for them yet at this point. So we all know that our salvation comes through Jesus and that we can't earn it. Okay, so let's just make sure we're solid in our theology that because God is graceful to us, we can't earn it. Okay, and yet there's still good for us to learn in this text, which is there is sin, which we do, which we need to confess honestly and openly before our God, and which we need to remove, pull out, yank out, like the weeds that are outside in my yard. Okay? So there's something cathartic in the removing of that. And that's something for us to do today, is to get very real with yourselves, very honest with yourself about, okay, when I reflect back on generations in my family, are there things that have been sinful that I can confess? Maybe you had a grandparent that had a horrific temper and who was emotionally abusive or physically abusive or addicted or any sort of family issues, okay? I know one of the things we study, or at least I've studied some in congregational interactions, is the idea of systems and our families and how congregations often act like families. And so some of our family baggage can play out in our congregations or in our current nuclear families. So it's a good thing for us to reflect on, even if it wasn't a sin that we ourselves did. Maybe it's simply a sin that we're aware of, to confess that and release it. And that's the big piece, I think, is just to release it and to put that at the altar of God. Okay? Because I think once we release those things into God's territory, God can demolish those things. And until we do that, we kind of lug it around like this extra baggage that defiles our relationships and our interactions with other people. So one way to think about this is in past extended family relationships. Another way maybe to think about it is societally, of what are the sins that you see of our society, of our culture toward one another that impact those relationships in ways that are detrimental. That's something else that you can say, okay, I may not have personally done this, but our society does this, and I'm in our society, so therefore I'm part of this. Whether knowingly or unknowingly, I do this. And that's one of the prayers we say sometimes in confession, is about whether we do things knowingly or unknowingly, that sin can still be pervasive, okay? And so I think those are two really great ways to look at sin in our lives today. And then you may also want to look at it just personally, of what am I tripping over? What am I stuck on? What is continuing to be a spot that is unclean in me, that I want to bring out, mention to God, confess to God, so that God can purify it and so that God can help me remedy that, okay? So I realize all of that may feel like, oh, that's heavy, that's intense, but it's kind of like spring cleaning, okay? And I know a lot of you are doing spring cleaning right now. It's kind of that time of year when it gets to be so pretty outside and we kind of want to get some of the gunk out of our own house. And on that note, I'll even show you some of the gunk at my house. Okay, so instead of going through the motions and sit in front of this fireplace where, you know, they could burn incense and they could go through the motions in this biblical text of, okay, God, we're doing everything we're supposed to do, check the box. Their king calls them away from, okay, don't go do sacrifices that are token only. Go do the work. And you may have noticed, it took them days and days and days to do the work. Like there's at least 2 weeks or a month that they're working on it. So I want to encourage you in that, right? We all have our own mess. That's not going to be immediate to clean up, all right? Now, I have right now a cleared desk, which looks so nice, and that's something great to show you. But right next to that is a huge pile of papers that I don't even exactly know what's in here. But I need to organize that, and I need to go through that. And that's not even the worst of it, okay? The worst of it probably is in my closet where I had some papers stored and they fell over, and I haven't even had a chance to pick them up yet. So I just left them on the floor of my closet, and it looks horrific, but it's going to make me get to it and clean it up. So on the floor of my closet, look at all these papers from school and from just moving and all sorts of stuff. It's a mess in there. It's embarrassing, right? I don't want to have to do that, and it can be almost overwhelming. But I think as people of God, we want to encourage each other to step into that, to step into those things so that we can remove them and so we can live our lives fully the way that God wants us to. God doesn't want me hanging out in my closet, reorganizing paperwork day after day after day. God wants me to handle it, bring it to God, ask for God's help with it, release it to God. God can help me figure out an organizational system, organize it, put it away, and then go out into the world in the way that God calls me to do. Okay? Go out and serve other people. Go out and love other people, whatever that is. But I encourage you today to spend some time praying and confessing your emotional baggage, your extended family sins, your societal sins, whatever blocks you from God. Okay? Whatever God's calling you to purify. And if you don't know, just ask God. Just pray and ask God. Okay? And then, like the King says, get to work. Okay? Confess it. Release it. And let Jesus take it to the cross, along with everything else that Jesus carried to the cross for our redemption and our healing and for our life in abundance. And that's the good news, life in abundance. That's what God has for us. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.